All right, today we're jumping into a really fascinating analysis that compares two totally different ways of looking at national health. We're going to see how one of the wealthiest nations in the world treats healthcare like a product you buy, while another country, with a lot fewer resources, has decided it's a basic human right.
Okay, let's just dive right in with a huge and honestly a very heavy question. Because depending on where you happen to live, the answer to this isn't some philosophical debate, it's a number on a bill. So what's that number? Well, in the United States, this is the estimated number of people who die every single year simply because they don't have health insurance. I mean, think about that. That's tens of thousands of lives lost, not to some mystery illness, but to the financial barriers standing between them and a doctor.
And that really gets to the heart of the issue in the U.S. system, right? The analysis we're looking at frames healthcare not as something everyone deserves, but as a commodity, something to be bought and sold on the open market.
Now, you might look at that 7.8% and think, hey, that's not a huge number, but it adds up to over 25 million people without any health insurance in 2023. So in one of the richest countries on the planet, millions of people are just one bad fall or one serious diagnosis away from potential disaster.
And for those folks without insurance, the financial wall they're up against is, well, it's immense. We're not talking about small bills. We're talking about costs that can wipe out a family's life savings. And the source makes a really grim point here. That bill shows up no matter what, sometimes even after a patient doesn't make it.
Okay, so now let's completely switch gears and look at a radically different way of thinking. Let's head over to Brazil and its public health system, which is known as the SUS.
And this slide just lays it out so clearly, doesn't it? It's a fundamental split in philosophy. In one column, health is something you buy. In the other, it's a right you're born with, and it's the government's absolute duty to provide it.
So what exactly is the SUS? Well, imagine this. Anyone, and I mean anyone, a citizen, a resident, even a tourist, can walk into an emergency room with, say, chest pains and get treated right away. Nobody's going to ask for your insurance card or your credit card first. It covers the whole shebang, from simple vaccinations to complex organ transplants, all paid for through taxes.
So, you might be wondering, is Brazil just some kind of outlier here? Is this a unique experiment? Well, according to this analysis, if we look around the world, it's actually far from it.
It turns out universal access to healthcare isn't the exception at all. It's pretty much the standard for developed nations. Whether it's the UK's famous NHS funded by taxes or Germany's model based on social insurance, the basic idea of guaranteed care is incredibly common.
And at the end of the day, what ties all these different systems together, including Brazil's, is this one really basic humanitarian idea. The mechanics might be different, but the core value is the same. You don't let people die from things that are treatable just because they can't pay in that moment of crisis.
All right, this is where things get really, really interesting. Let's put the philosophy aside for a second and just look at the cold, hard numbers. Let's see what happens when you compare the outcomes of the US and Brazilian systems.
First up, spending. The United States pours nearly 18% of its absolutely massive GDP into healthcare. That's one of the highest rates in the world. Brazil, on the other hand, spends about 9.5%, so proportionally about half as much. Now, for spending literally double, you'd expect a huge, massive difference in results, right? Well, this is what the analysis calls the central paradox. The U.S. has millions of people with no coverage, while Brazil guarantees it for everyone. And yet, look at their life expectancies. They're basically the same, less than a year apart.
So let me just put that plainly, because it's kind of wild. The analysis shows that Brazil, a developing nation, provides universal coverage to its massive population and gets a comparable life expectancy, all while spending proportionally half of what the U.S. does.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Why does any of this matter? Well, the source material wraps this up not just as a debate about policy, but as a really profound statement about a nation's values.
The analysis argues that the SUS is way more than just a government program. It's like a social pact. It's this collective agreement that a person's life is priceless, and its value should never, ever be determined by how much money they have.
And the analysis leaves us with this really powerful idea. It suggests that while some of the world's richest countries are still wrestling with this problem, Brazil just went ahead and made a decisive moral choice about healthcare all the way back in 1988. They decided no one should die at a hospital door because they're broke.
And we end on this very provocative thought from the source material. It reframes the whole conversation. Defending this public system
isn't just a political position. It's presented as an act of patriotism, a defense of a core national value. And it leaves all of us with a big question to think about. What does a country's healthcare system really say about what it values most?